So now y'all come into my kitchen. This is Cooking Today. Hi, welcome to Cooking Today. I'm glad you're here. Happy Wednesday to you. Today, I am making a delicious dinner that is one of Sam's favorites. I know I say that a lot around here, but isn't it so fun to cook for your people? I love to make the things that my family likes. I am making a fried pork chop and some really delicious creamy mashed potatoes with a little bit of that good skin on it. So they're a little creamy, they're a little earthy from the skin. There's some, a little bit of cheese and butter, some good stuff with our pork chops. And I'll just tell you, this is what makes me laugh so hard, y'all. This is my sweet, simple husband. I cook a lot of food. I try recipes all the time. I'm going through cookbooks and brainstorming and testing and cooking for this show. So at the end of last season, he said, you know what my favorite thing was that you made all year? And I was expecting something like fancy that took me a ton of work, that was something new that he hadn't had. And he said, that time you fried those pork chops? I'm like, fried pork chops? I mean, we are not reinventing the wheel. That is very old-fashioned, isn't it? He loves this, y'all. So officially speaking, we could say this is Sam's favorite meal. He likes a lot of things. But out of the whole entire year last year, this is the one that he said was his favorite. So I thought I would make it for you today. A pork chop is just delicious. I always get ones that have bone in. There's flavor in it. That meat right around the bone right there is so good and tender. And I'm just going to add a little bit of extra kind of surprise flavor to our breading that's going to go on our pork chop. Kind of inspired by, I have an uncle. His name was Uncle Buddy. He was actually a great uncle who always added a little bit of chili powder or paprika to his rub mix. And so I'm going to do that today just to kind of change up a classic, regular old flour, salt, and pepper pork chop. We're going to season our breading just a little bit. And I'm going to add in a little brown sugar. So what I have for our coating for our pork chops or what I have is a cup of flour, regular old all-purpose flour. And then I'm adding in about 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, which is going to kind of sweeten it a little bit. It caramelizes a little bit in your skillet. It's just, again, a little bit of a change up from, I'm going to go ahead and put all that in there. I think I measured it. It's kind of a, little bit of a change up from the ones that we've had our whole lives. And the ones we've had our whole lives are delicious, but this is just kind of fun. Then I'm going to add, we want some good salt. So I'm going to do 3 teaspoons of salt, and then an ode to my Uncle Betty. I've got a little bit of chili powder here, and I'm going to do a scant 2 teaspoons. I've tried it a couple of different ways. I've done it with 1 teaspoon. I did it with 3. I think 2 is good, but you don't want them to be heaping. You want them to be just a little bit less than, if that makes sense. Okay, chili powder. So in our breading, we have some salt, we have a little bit of sweet, we have this kind of like warm heat from our chili powder. And then I'm just going to add the tiniest bit, like a half a teaspoon or so of granulated garlic to it. Just a little bit. We don't want it to taste real garlicky. And that's it. That's our rub. Isn't that easy? Like I said, our grannies made their pork chops mostly, at least Una Mae always made hers this way, flour, salt, and pepper. And that was it. That's all there was in it. This is just a fun little twist, and it smells really, really good. Then we put it with those good earthy, creamy potatoes and make a gravy out of what's left behind in our skillet after this brown sugar and this little bit of garlic and this chili powder. Those flavors are kind of left in our hot pan, and we make a little gravy that has a little bit of that flavoring left over in it, and it is really, really good. Okay, so I'm just using my spoon to go ahead and just kind of incorporate that, and make sure your brown sugar is, you know, usually has a little clump. Just make sure that you're kind of mashing those out. Okay, and then I'm going to let this sit and tell you, we've got a big old pot of boiling water going that is really well salted for our potatoes. And what I bought was just a bag of about 24, 28 ounce, like small yellow potatoes, and cubed them. And I've already done that here. So I leave the skin on because there's nutrition in the skin, and I love that earthiness and that texture that it gives in the potatoes. I just think that's so good. So since these were the little baby Dutches, the little baby yellow Dutch potatoes, some of them I just cubed, like quartered. And then some of them are so small, I just cut them right in half. And then that's all there is to it. So I'm gonna put these in our well salted water, and we're gonna let those roll while we're making our while we're making our pork chops. I'm gonna put these in the water. When we come back, we're gonna start dredging. This is cooking today. Hi, welcome back to Cooking Today. We're making delicious fried pork chops, and I say fried loosely. We're not going to deep fry these things, which I have seen people deep fry, like really batter them and like drop them in oil. We're going to do a little batter, a little dredge on the outside. Give them just a minute to crisp on the outsides, and then we're going to finish them off in the oven. So I'm going to use fried loosely. We're going to do a really good battered, crisped pork chop, bone-in pork chop today with some delicious creamy mashed potatoes. Oh, I hear my potatoes. I put my potatoes in, obviously, because they're, you know, spitting at me just a little bit, in really well salted water, because the thing is, my linen is letting loose of some lint. Look like we have little angels in here. You really want to well salt your water because potatoes have zero flavor, don't they? They just kind of taste like the ground, if you ask me. No offense to potatoes. Hope I didn't hurt any potatoes' feelings by saying that. You know, the potatoes that watch my show anyway. Anyway, they don't have a lot of flavor, and you really want them to taste salty. Don't you just yearn for salt in your potatoes? You know, sometimes you do a drive-through restaurant and you get that bag of French fries and they didn't salt them and you're just devastated. You want to get your salt in your potatoes while they're boiling, because it gets in, that flavor gets inside those potatoes, makes them so good and tender. So I just have this big pot going, and I've got a good boil on those, so I'm not going to lift my lid. And I'm just going to let those go. And they'll start to kind of separate a little bit from their skins, and that's when you just kind of poke them and make sure that they're fork tender, but they're just going to roll on. Okay. So we mixed our little dredge, our coating that's going to go on the outside of our pork chops. Then we're just making our little dredging stations. We've done this before with chicken parm and a couple of, sorry, that one took a long time to get open, didn't it? Resistance, egg resistance. You know, your dredging stations, you just need to kind of get them set up. And what a dredge is basically is a wet coating and then like a crumb coating or a dry coating. And so I know that, you know, if you were doing chicken, you might have buttermilk in our little egg side, but I'm just going to do eggs. We don't have to have any milk or cream in these. Just an egg. I did 2 actually, and I'm just going to give it a little mix with my fork. And it kind of creates it like a sticky layer so that our flour coating holds on. Now, I have my skillet. This is my big double-handled, it's stove. It's my double-handled fry pan. I use it all the time here. You know, I have my certain pieces that are workhorses, and this is one of them. And I'm going to just swirl it with some oil, and my skillet's already going. I'm just now putting my oil in it, and I want to kind of watch that. I need to see it shimmering just a little bit, smoking just a little tiny bit, and then we'll know that it's ready. And in the meantime, we are going to do our pork chops. I always have my sheet pan lined with a metal cooling rack. If you don't have anything else, just this, y'all. It's probably under $40. It is such a perfect piece, like a set of equipment for you to use in your kitchen that you will use time and time and time again. if you watch this show or any other cooking shows you've seen. Okay, so what I want to do, I'm not going to use these. I just am not. I'm a hands girl. So we have our 3 bone-in pork chops, okay? Here's the bone right here. I'm actually going to pick it up from there. And then what I want to do is give them a little salt. I'm just going to use this salt, and then we'll just dump it out since I've got yucky fingers in it. I want to salt each side of my pork because we want it to be, you know, a pork chop. You want to have that salty, good, crispy bite, and that is going to give us that layer. Then we're going to just dredge. So we're going to go into our liquid, our egg, okay, get it on both sides, and then straight into our flour mixture. Look at that. See how that coated that really, really well? And kind of pat it down, and then sometimes I kind of flip it back over one more time just to make sure all the parts are covered. I like there to almost be a little bit of excess on our pork because it kind of gets a little extra crunchy, crispy. And then if any bit of that falls off in our pan, then that becomes our kind of a good base for the gravy that we're going to make. Okay, pork chop number 1 down. Look at that. And there's that little bit of seasoning. Remember in our flour coating that is so, so good. Okay, now I'm going to lay out both of these. Let's just salt them both right away. I'll keep my hands good and clean. And I can tell that my potatoes, I can hear them. You know, you kind of cook with your ears. Cooking with my ears. I can tell my potatoes heat has kind of gone down a little bit, so I'm going to give that we want to boil. Okay, so here's what we've done. You've seen me do this one. We're going to salt both sides of these, dunk them in the eggs, dunk them in our flour coating, and then when we come back, we will fry these up and stick them in the oven. They are so good. I can't wait for you to see. This is cooking today. Hi, welcome back to Cooking Today. I'm making Sam's favorite meal from 2016, apparently. That's what he told me anyway. He likes a good old-fashioned breaded pork chop with really good creamy mashed potatoes. Isn't that easy and delicious? And some of y'all have actually said, make pork chops. I want to see how you make them. Well, here it is. We have a bone-in pork chop. I've got 3 here right now for the sake of time. The recipe is for 4. And there's actually enough breading. You saw like that coating that we had left over. You could probably do as many as 6 or so, you know, using the dredge ingredients that I have written for you. We're doing 3 today. And we have our skillet, our double handle fry pan from Staub that is wonderful workhorse. It has preheated. I have had it preheating a really long time. So we're crossing our fingers these don't just burn right up. We'll see. But you want to have a preheated skillet with a little bit of oil in the bottom of it. And we want to get a really good, fast, crisp sear on the outside. We're not cooking these through. Then we're putting them in our 375-degree oven for just a few minutes or so. You don't want to overcook pork because it's really tender when it's done well. And when it's overdone, it gets a little bit tough. And we don't want that, right? So, a little bit of oil. I've got my dredged pork chops going in. Okay, so see that little bit of like the crumbs and that flour coating that's kind of coming off in our skillet? That is what I was telling you, is that really good stuff for the gravy. Isn't that good? And we saved our dredge mixture right here because we need about a 1/4 cup of flour to start our gravy, and we're going to go ahead and just use the one that we dragged our pork chops in because there's all that good seasoning. And any of the raw pork that, you know, might be left behind, it's going to cook out in our gravy anyway, so there's no need to worry about that. But that's the good stuff right there, okay? 1/4 cup, we want to be sure to have that left over. Okay, these do not take long to get a little crisp, and it is perfectly okay. Oh yes, look at that. It is perfectly okay to flip these a couple of times to get the gold that you want. Like this one on this side, to me, on my high side, isn't quite the color that I want yet. So for me to go ahead and flip that one more time, it's perfectly fine. Side note, this is parentheses. You don't want to flip pancakes. That's one of the few things that you don't want to flip a couple of times. You'll actually lose your loft. That was a tough one on your pancakes if you flip them more than one time. So the flip until you get them right that I'm talking about for pork does not apply to pancakes. That's just a little side note. I would never want to lead you astray on your flip. Okie doke. So I'm going to dump out my flour mixture, rinse off the gunk on this liner here, and then this is again all going back into the oven, so I'm just going to use the same pan. And then I'm going to go ahead and get these off. Oh yes, those look so nice. We're just getting our crisp right here. Looks good. Oh, it smells delicious. You know what, I'm going to let that one go a little longer on this side of my skillet. I have a hot side of my skillet. I think we've talked about that before. So I'm going to let that one get a little bit more color. Our oven is preheated to 375. All we're going to do is put this sheet pan in the oven and let it cook for another 5 or 6 minutes until the inside temperature is about 140, 160. I'll confirm that. You just want you want it to be just white and cooked through with the tiniest bit of pink. Y'all know what a pork chop looks like on the inside. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. I think this one's gonna have plenty of time now that it's been on my hot side. Yep, there's the color I wanted. Now, that skillet turns off, okay? These go in the oven. We wanna let that completely cool down. There's a little bit of oil left in the bottom. We are gonna make our gravy shortly, and then y'all, mashed potatoes, this is so simple. All we've done is boil those potatoes. We're gonna drain them, stir in a little butter, a little chicken stock, a little bit of half and half, and then I have shredded some really good white cheddar. You could use Gruyere, which I absolutely love. Just a little bit of cheese to kind of cream them up a little bit and make them really good. We'll do that when we get back. Our pork chops will be done. This is such a fun, hearty, old-fashioned meal with a little bit of a spin on some of our flavors, but I think you're sure to love it. Come back. This is Cooking Today. Hi, welcome back to Cooking Today. We're wrapping up delicious breaded, crisped, and then oven-baked pork chops with a little bit of brown sugar, a little bit of chili powder in the breading. So there's a little bit of sweetness, a little warmth, and then that good classic salty crunch that we love from an old-fashioned pork chop. Then I have made a batch of delicious mashed potatoes. Y'all, mashed potatoes are nothing new. They're easy. Boil those potatoes skin on and all, no big deal. Drained them off. I threw in a half a stick of butter while they were hot, stirred it in, started mashing. And then once I got a little bit of that mash going, I stirred in about a half a cup of half and half a cup of chicken stock, a handful of salt, and then whatever cheese you've got. Today I used a really good white aged cheddar for just a little bit of tang, kind of ups the ante a little bit on these really good, this spin on an old-fashioned meal. And then here are our pork chops. Look at these. I'm going to lay down a beautiful pork chop. And y'all, we crisped them in a hot skillet, remember? And then I baked them off in the oven, and the internal temperature needs to be between about 140, 145, and 160 to 165, depending on how you like it. And then let's do that for a second. That's a cheese pull because I put some good, about a half a cup or so of that good white cheddar in there. God, that looks good, doesn't it? Look, I love a little ice cream scoop right on top, and then we made our gravy. we took those pan drippings. I threw in about 1/4 cup of the flour from our dredge. And then I stirred that around and cooked it till it was nice and golden brown. It kind of makes you a little roux on the bottom. And then I just poured in milk, 4 cups. And then you just start to stir and stir and stir and whisk. You turn your heat up to about a medium and get a good boil going. Turn it back down and let it simmer till it's thick. And taste as you go. It's fabulous. We're going to ladle this gravy right on top and then just garnish it with a little parsley. Y'all, it's a really great fancier redo of a classic family favorite. Hope you'll try this recipe at home and love every bite. This is Cooking Today.